Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Always a lot going on in the world of professional basketball. We've got a lot to dive into today. In fact, starting things off,
I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story.
I love that. That's right. The Jazz are now open to trading Donovan Mitchell. I think we knew this could be happening at some point, but here we are. Danny Ainge remaking this Utah Jazz roster. Keith, initial thoughts before we start diving into all the ripple effects of this.
Yeah, I guess my initial thoughts were I've been ready to throw all my computer equipment straight out the window and into the trash can for trash pickup. So I apologize in advance if this is bouncy or skippy. I have new equipment coming. It'll be here tonight. So apologies in advance to anyone who's struggled through this the last few shows. I know it's been frustrating on our side too. Now to basketball. Again, this is not overly surprising. I think when Danny Ainge took over, we had a sense of he might tear this thing all the way to the ground if they don't succeed in this year's playoffs. They did not. And then the Rudy Gobert trade, that was step one. And then it was, maybe they won't trade Mitchell. Then there were some comments by Justin Zanuck, who's actually the general manager of the team. He works directly beneath Ainge. We heard him say, well, we'll never say never, and things change in the NBA, and a lot of I'm not going to tell you we won't trade him because I don't want to hear it if we do trade him. And now here we are, report from Woj this afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, that yes, they are listening to trade offers on Donovan Mitchell and not just shutting everyone down. I'm going to read between the lines a little bit and say there might be a Donovan Mitchell trade coming here relatively soon, because otherwise, why would that even get reported, right?
Right. That's true. Now, here's the thing, right? I mean, the Kevin Durant trade market has a Rudy Gobert problem right now, or a Minnesota Timberwolves problem, more accurately, in which a lot of the NBA saw what the Wolves paid for Rudy Gobert, went, oh my gosh, they overpaid. What were they doing? Is the same thing going to hold true for Donovan Mitchell, where teams – the Nets are expecting more than Rudy Gobert for Kevin Durant, and that's the problem because teams around the NBA are saying, that's an outlier. The Wolves messed up. We're not paying that. Are the Jazz going to expect the same kind of return for Donovan Mitchell, and could that likewise stall out his trade market?
It could. You could also look at it as the Jazz say, hey, we already got the monster return and number of picks and all that, and we don't need necessarily that. Maybe they look for more value picks, in that sense or something along those lines. I think now they put themselves in play to say, hey, Brooklyn, if you're making a Durant trade, maybe we get involved. Not that they would get KD, but maybe we can get involved and we can, look at this as some kind of a bigger trade package. DeAndre Ayton's still sitting out there. We heard yesterday maybe headed to the Pacers. That's another possibility that we could see. So I think what this does is just basically opens the door for, hey, there's all sorts of ways we can go. And because they already got that massive pick haul from the Timberwolves, maybe they don't need a million draft picks in a Mitchell trade. Maybe it's more player centric. Maybe it's send us a couple younger guys who are a little bit ready to go right now, and we go from there.
Now, if the Jazz do move Mitchell, does that signal a larger rebuild? And then what does that mean for everybody else on that? There's a lot of veterans on this roster. Does that, in theory, put everybody on the trade market?
Yeah, I think it probably does. I think, right, you have then Bogdanovich is somebody I think a lot of teams would like to grab. Maybe Mike Conley. We'll see. I don't know where his value sits overall. Jordan Clarkson, if you're really looking for a bench scorer. Then you got all the guys they just got from the Wolves. They certainly don't need a lot of them, right? Patrick Beverley, Malik Beasley. I would assume they'd probably keep Jared Vanderbilt, right? He's young enough that you could use him in whatever you're going to build up next. But yeah, I think at that point you do start really opening yourself to, all right, let's look at some other stuff here, because what do we need all these guys who are on shorter term veteran contracts? That's not necessarily going to help us moving forward. Let's look to move those guys out. And then you really, at that point, you're looking for, hey, you want to give us 2 seconds for Jordan Clarkson? Okay, like let's go. A young player for Bogdanovich. Okay, good. We're gonna go and move that direction. So that's my guess is they're gonna, if they move Mitchell, yeah, start trading the other guys too, because what's the point in hanging on to them?
So when I'm looking at what essentially the NBA has been deadlocked for a week plus in the wake of the Kevin Durant situation, everything has just been frozen, and it's been frustrating for NBA fans who have been waiting for a lot of stuff to happen.
Mhm.
DeAndre Ayton, Kyrie Irving, Colin Sexton, all these players that have just been kind of sitting out there, and everything is stuck waiting for Kevin Durant to either get moved or not, whatever the Nets are going to do there. And we're going to get into KD more in a moment. Could this break up some of the gridlock, suddenly having this interest in the Jazz and the Jazz making it known that Donovan Mitchell is on the market potentially, as well as all their other players that they've got on the roster?
Yeah, it could. I kind of look at it as it's almost like having a bit of a clogged pipe. And once you get that first initial clog pushed through, then everything starts flowing right behind it. Now that may be the way we see this go. We may see this, be the thing that kind of comes down the pipe and busts through that clog, and off it goes. We may see that, and what you might have too is, right, we've heard not that there will be a Jazz Nets direct trade. We already did see one. We saw Royce O'Neal go there. But we did hear, the Nets don't have a lot of interest in rebuilding when they trade Durant and Irving. Maybe they get involved and say, all right, hey, the salary matching's a little difficult. All right, what if we sent you Bogdanovich and Conley or something like that? And then there's the salary, that's we'll get involved and we'll take back a player, somewhere from another team. Could that be a way they jump in, and could they help in a Westbrook trade? And then, at that point, you're acquiring Russell Westbrook contract versus Russell Westbrook. When I get excited, that name trips me up so much.
I have fought that battle all year, Keith.
Right?
I feel your pain. I know. Yeah,
Add it to
I
the
know
list for why you're ready for him to go.
exactly. Yep. Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Front office show brought to you by Bugs Bunny, right?
Yep.
Anyway, but you're acquiring him as the contract versus the player, because then maybe you just buy him out if you're Utah and say, all right, go. And, even if you're not getting a huge, give back, fine. Doesn't really matter, because, what's the difference? So that it definitely does open up all sorts of opportunity and ways to do different things here, because now you might have the Jazz involved in things they might not have been involved in a day or two ago.
Right. It changes the status quo. So we could see this shake things. I mean, this could, we don't know all the ripple effects, but this could lead to a Kevin Durant trade. Like you said, maybe this is something that allows the Jazz to get in and be a team that absorbs some salary. If particularly they've made the decision that, we're not going to push to contend this year. We're not going to try to make the playoffs this year. We're going to join the Spurs in the tank race, and we're going to try to get future assets. Maybe that does open things up a little bit, because there's not that many teams right now that are looking to go that route. So we'll see.
Let's just talk a minute more about the Jazz and their cap sheet. Mitchell has 4 years under contract, so that's good if you're an acquiring team. That last year is a player option, so maybe something happens with that one. But really, you've got him for a minimum of 3 years, so you're feeling pretty good about putting forward the investment to acquire him. With that, so that's a good part of it. It's a good chunk of money. It's 135 million roughly over those 4 years.
He's worth it.
Yeah, exactly. And it works out to be 97.8 million over the next 3 years. There is a 15% trade bonus, so it'll go up just slightly in there, but nothing too overly crazy. But after him, the only fully guaranteed salary on the Jazz cap sheet as of right now for next season is Walker Kessler, who just signed his rookie scale deal. You have Mike Conley. His $24 million contract is mostly guaranteed. It's a little over half, 14.3 million guaranteed. And then you've got Jared Vanderbilt, but 300,000 guaranteed. And then after that, it's like Rudy Gay on a player option. He'll probably pick that up at this point in his career. Jordan Clarkson has a player option. My guess is he'll probably pick that up because it's worth 14.3 million. But then you've got a bunch of team options and other stuff that the Jazz are in control of. So Utah has a chance here to really reset, and they'd be resetting. Think about it. With whatever they get back from Mitchell plus cap space, plus the Jazz have 4 extra picks coming from Minnesota still. They have picks to swap in some of the years there. They have a
Yeah.
couple extra picks coming this year in this year's draft as well. So there's all sorts of stuff here where this is kind of similar-ish to when Ainge tore down the Celtics and then had a bunch of draft picks, ton of cap flexibility, and just move forward with a lot of different stuff. So it's very interesting to me to see where he goes forward with this with the Jazz from here if he does trade Donovan Mitchell.
From a Jazz perspective, I think that there's some interesting possibilities here for the future if they do move off of Donovan Mitchell. I think from the NBA perspective, this gives a shot in the arm to the flickering embers of the offseason. I mean, fans were starting to check out because they were tired of waiting on this Durant thing and everything else to go on. But now, this
could be get told over and over like this going to training camp. And,
exactly.
And, you start to say, all right, I'm going to move on to baseball and getting ready for the football season. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Right. What teams do you think? This is pure speculation at this point because we don't have anything official. But looking around the NBA, who do you expect to be the most aggressive trying to acquire Donovan Mitchell?
We've heard the heat for him in the past. He's more acquirable than Kevin Durant is just because the salary is $10 million less in that. So that becomes a little bit easier to maybe make a deal happen there. So I think that could get really interesting with that. So that could be, kind of a fun team to see. You'll go after him. So I think that's a team definitely to watch moving forward.
The Knicks have long been a team that's been associated with Donovan Mitchell. But
yeah.
They just kind of made their moves to get Jalen Brunson.
You'd have to be super comfortable with going really small in your backcourt with him and Brunson at that point, if that's the direction you want to go. So maybe, maybe that is the way you go. So I don't know. They could still, even with the Brunson deal, they've got contracts they could put together to go get him. With these, they've got now a bunch of extra picks because they've got a Dallas pick. They've got all the picks they got in the Jalen Durant trade too. So you're in a spot where you can really do some stuff if you were the Knicks. I'm trying to think like who else jumps out at me immediately. It's not that I'm thinking like, well, he doesn't have any kind of market. It's just
right.
These big salaries can be hard to. Yeah, exactly. Could the Clippers do?
That's what I was just thinking.
Like, go a little younger and put him out there with Paul George and PG. Because the other thing with Mitchell too is right. You kind of, at least for me, I tend to think of him as a shooting guard, but then I think, well, you can play the one as long as you got a couple other guys who can handle the ball out there and pass. Like he'd be fine at the one. So, yeah, then you're talking, Reggie Jackson and stuff. They're a little light on picks, so that part gets a little harder, but they can trade picks further out because their obligation OKC is now closer in years. So yeah, maybe I don't know. Teams are gearing up though. Everybody seems like they're kind of starting to load up a little bit. Not quite the 3 stars approach, but it does seem like more teams this year are willing to take a jump and go into the luxury tax and those kind of things. Like we're at 10 teams over the tax right now. So it wouldn't surprise. Well, 11 teams are, just over, ranging from just over to way over the tax. So
right.
Yeah, why not? Right. It's Donovan Mitchell. You're not gonna have a shot at a guy like this all that often.
I wonder if Dallas could get into the mix. I'm not saying they've got the right pieces, but they're a team that's always interested when somebody like this pops up on the market is finding that guy that they want to pair with Luka.
Yeah, now you got me kind of looking, right? Contract wise, they get there very easily. It's just do they have the value?
That's the challenge.
Yeah, if you could convince them, take on Dinwiddie, and it'd be kind of funny if they turned Dinwiddie and Bertans into, Porzingis into Mitchell. That'd be hilarious. But yeah, maybe. I would have thought prior to their, I think their roster's pretty well set, but I would have thought before maybe Denver.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's one now. I mean, a lot of teams in the East, I know, Celtics fans are going to clamor a little bit because they're going to say, well, he's super good friends with Jaylen Brown. And they had all that nonsense in the bubble where they were constantly tweeting about each other and stuff. But the problem is, how's Boston going to get him without giving up Brown in that trade? And that becomes, kind of your issue there. And I'm just not sure that's the direction they want to go after, they've kind of done their big stuff already with Brogdon and Gallo. So, yeah, maybe it's somebody we're not even thinking of. Maybe it's some team comes completely out of nowhere. You know who should throw a whole bunch of stuff at the Jazz? Detroit. I think he'd be a great fit with Cade.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Are they really ready to win right now though?
But he's not 30, right? I mean,
no, he's not. But
how old is he?
Like if you're Donovan Mitchell and you go from a team that's at least committed to making the playoffs to suddenly you're with the Pistons and you're not sure.
But
he's under contract.
He close in the East.
Yeah.
Right, and he'll be 26 in a couple months, just before the start of the season. So that's still young enough to fit, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think him and Cade Cunningham would fit. Now, of course, you'd have Jazz fans saying, "Well, we would need Cade Cunningham,"
right?
But then it starts to turn into, well, why? Why are we doing this? But Sacramento got involved. That would be fun.
I mean, are they willing to give up Keegan Murray after what we've seen?
What about De'Aaron Fox and stuff?
Fox? I mean, if I'm the Jazz, that's the first thing I'm asking for is Murray.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, especially with how he's looking in the last week.
Yeah.
It would be, just for complete comedy sake, it would be funny if he get traded to Minnesota.
Oh my gosh.
That would just be hilarious. So, but all right, if we're getting to that point, we should probably move on.
Let's talk about the Kevin. Let's move on to Kevin Durant. KD, Scottie Barnes is reportedly a non-starter in a Kevin Durant trade. Try to guess which side this is coming from.
Right.
Obviously from the Raptors side of things. I understand, like, teams want to pair star players with other guys, so I get this. Do the Raptors have enough to get Kevin Durant if they say Scottie Barnes is off limits?
Maybe. It depends on where the Nets want to go. If they are really committed to trying to win, still, then you got to think, something around Anunoby, one of Siakam or Van Vliet, maybe. That's probably should be enough, but I don't know if, and then probably picks and something else. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, if I'm the Nets, I'm gonna hold and hold and hold.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe get a really good offer and then go back to Masai Ujiri and say, hey, we have an offer in hand from Team X. Do you want to beat it with putting Scottie Barnes in the deal? And then we go. Yeah, I don't know. It is interesting that the Durant trade market, now we've heard it enough different places that I'm going to say, yeah, there's probably definitely truth to it, that it's just they're finding it very much like, okay, we may not get the package we want. And that is, that's, yeah, right? I mean, kind of get it, right? That may be the way this goes. But yeah, and so let me flip that. If you're the Raptors, you're running the team. Masai quit yesterday. And he's like, Trevor, you're in charge now. Are you giving up Scottie Barnes in a Durant trade?
I mean, it depends on what else is going with him. But if suddenly you've got Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, I mean, you could argue that's a title contending team if you put Kevin Durant in that mix.
Oh, you got to take without a doubt it is.
Right? I mean, that's a really good team. And so you have to consider, and of course, if you're the Raptors, you're doing everything you can to not give him up, because the ideal situation would be to pair him with Durant.
Mm-hmm.
But man, that chance to win a championship, and you've got Kevin Durant for 4 more years, that's pretty enticing. The question is it Scottie Barnes plus, and how much is that plus? That's really what it comes down to. If it's Scottie Barnes and not a lot more, then I think you probably do it. If you're the Raptors, sorry, Raptors fans, who probably hate me now, but I would probably do it. But if it's Scottie Barnes and enough to where I don't feel like my team is a clear contender anymore, like let's say it's Scottie Barnes and you've got to put in Anunoby or something like that, that's where you go, whoa, and you back away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's pretty much where I'm at too with this. And right done in Celtics world, it's a lot of discussion of would you give up Jaylen Brown? And my point has been if it was Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant straight up, which
Yeah.
let's just pretend it worked, I probably would do it. I wouldn't feel super great about it, but I would probably do it and say, yeah, I mean, at least for the next couple of years, you're at number 1A on title contention, right?
Yep.
With Durant, Tatum, and the rest of the guys. It's when it becomes, it's not, that would not be what it would be. It would be Brown plus plus. Then that's where it's that plus plus that becomes a challenge in a
Right.
KD trade where it's like that's honestly, I think that's probably where the Nets are stuck. Because if it was just give me a young player and give me a bunch of draft picks, let's go. Problem is, good young players generally rarely come with the salary that can match in the trade. So you're having to add something else in anyway. And NBA teams are not sitting on 4 or 5 of these contracts between 15 and 20 million that are crap anymore. Like they just nobody has that anymore. Most of those guys are good players. So you're not just, hey, throw that guy in the deal because it doesn't matter. So that's where it just makes it that much more complicated to make a Durant trade.
Right. The Miami Heat have also been listed as a team that were determined to trade for Durant. Now, maybe Donovan Mitchell being on the market changes that, and maybe
Sure.
they shift their attention. But the Heat are that team that anytime there's a star out there, just throw their name in the
Yep.
mix because they're going to be interested in making a deal. There's nothing that jumps out at me as an obvious trade for KD using the Miami Heat, but yeah, I'm
Just
never
too
going to put
hard
it
to
past
match
Pat Riley.
salary for me,
That's the problem.
right? Yeah, it's like they have Bam, but Bam and Simmons can't be on the same team because of the designated player rule acquiring more than one by a trade, so that becomes an issue. So that's the whole thing, there in itself. And KD is, I don't want to say openly, but reports are he has made it known. I go to Miami, I want to play with Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Kyle Lowry. Well, then you're not going to Miami. Like there's just not enough salaries to stack up in a deal to make it happen. That becomes a major challenge in that situation. And it's funny you said that with the Heat. And I don't mean this with any snark or disrespect meant. A snark comes on the market. There's two teams you instantly know are going to be connected: the Heat and the Lakers. And it's it's just how it is, right? It used to be the Knicks, but I think we've finally gotten over just people throwing the Knicks in just at random because it doesn't go that way anymore. But the Heat and the Lakers every single time they're at least gonna be involved around the periphery, if nothing else.
Let's chat a little bit about the midseason tournament. That's something that sounds like it's coming. 2023, 2024 season could be happening. Is this a good idea for the NBA to have this? I know they've talked about a soccer style tournament for a while now. It's a way to try to give a shot in the arm to the middle of the NBA season, the dog days of the season. Do you like this concept in the NBA?
I don't know. Like I don't know. Trying to identify. It depends on what it looks like. If it shortens down the regular season a little bit, and I got to see how teams even handle it. Are
Yeah.
they even interested in this? Is this a thing? Where we're hearing maybe, it might be where some regular season games also count as like group play games. Fine, I guess then, right? And they're only talking maybe bringing 16 teams or whatever, or maybe even only 8 into this actual tournament, and then everybody else gets time off. And then you kind of wonder, would we rather have the time off or do we want to go?
Yep.
Right? Like, is that, if you're a veteran team, you might rather say, I'm good. If I'm the Warriors, you're probably like, let's not make that tournament, or do you go and say, hey, guess what? James Wiseman, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, young guys, you guys are playing, 35 minutes a night. That's the thing. I as I throw myself into English soccer over the past couple of years, and like I've noticed that some of those mid-season tournaments they treat them, especially the early rounds, a little bit more like it's developmental time. Like we're going to play the younger players, the guys who don't get a lot of field time. We're going to get them out there, let them play, sit our regulars, and rest them up for, whether it be another more prestigious tournament. Because that's the challenge right over there. There's like 5 or 6 of these sometimes that are going on. But yeah, I don't know. I gotta see all the details on it before I really want to pass judgment, because I didn't like the play-in tournament idea after
And
the
it worked
bubble
out.
season. The bubble season, I got it. Totally understood why they did it there, and it made sense. I wasn't sure I wanted it to stick around, and now I kind of love it. So
Yeah.
I'm not like, yeah, let's see.
I like
You,
it as long
yeah,
as the teams are invested. And I
yep,
don't know exactly what they do in order to make that happen, but as long as the
yep.
teams don't just look at it as this is a chance for rest, then it's fine. If it becomes that where teams just say we're not playing to win in this, that let's just LeBron stay home, Kevin Durant stay home, all the stars stay home,
Mhm.
then it loses its luster very quickly. So we'll have to see exactly what the NBA does to incentivize teams to make sure they don't just use it as an opportunity for rest.
And
Last thing.
one
Oh yeah,
last,
go ahead.
sorry on that. I just want to say you have to incentivize teams and players both,
Yeah,
right? Because there's talk of $1 million per player prize or something like that that the players get. And I know some people would be like let's use the Lakers for example, because it's LeBron. Well, why would LeBron care? Well, LeBron would care because you don't think LeBron would like to get Max Christie, Austin Reeves, an extra
sure.
$1 million. Like a lot of those guys do care about that stuff. Like that is important to them. So that you would still get that's enough motivation on the player side. I think on the team side though is what's our motivation to play LeBron 40 minutes a game in
Right.
this silly tournament that has no bearing on our ultimate goal of winning the title. Bobby Marks threw out an idea. I think it was on the Low Post where I heard it, and he's like, "Do you give that team the right to pick their playoff opponent if they make
Yeah.
it into the actual playoffs?" And there's all sorts of things, but that's exactly, you have to incent the teams too, because otherwise, what's the point on their side, right? Like if the end goal is still I want to win the NBA championship, I don't really care about winning the David Stern Cup or whatever the heck they're going to call this
Right.
thing in the middle of the year. Like I don't like what does that do? That it'll become like, oh, you hung a banner for it, but it's like hanging the division title banner, right?
Sure.
Nobody
Yeah.
cares about that. And there's and I realize you and I are coming from very on high with things like that. We're like, who cares about division titles? Like they
Right.
don't even hang those in Boston or LA because they don't matter. But it is just like I get it. So yeah, well, let's see how they incent both sides.
Maybe they'll make rings for the midseason tournament too. Could happen.
I don't mind the summer league rings. People
No,
are mad about
it's
it. It's like
fine.
I had to pay for them.
It's a little goofy, I think. It's
Yeah,
a little
it's
goofy.
a
But
little silly. I agree, but I didn't have to pay for them as long as league
true.
pass doesn't go up in cost. Then I don't
That's
really
right. Speaking of costs, the NBA they want to discuss the Warriors spending, and this is something that the board of governors wants to look into. They spent a fortune in putting their team
almost
together.
350 million.
Yeah, 350 million. I mean, so the NBA wants to take a look at this because they don't want to be a sport where the path to a championship is through the checkbook. It's just by
Mhm.
spending more than everybody else because then well, I mean, then we get Moneyball, right? Then we get
Yeah.
50 feet of crap and then the Oakland A's, right? I mean, that's not what the NBA wants to have. So they're going to take a look at this and see, is this really a good thing that the Warriors had such a high payroll and then won an NBA championship? Part of that is owners want to protect themselves from themselves. They don't want to be in an environment where they have to spend in order to win. That's part of the CBA, why it exists, is in order to ensure profits for owners. But this is something to keep an eye on because we're seeing more and more of a discrepancy between franchises and particularly between owners. Look at a guy like Steve Ballmer, right, who has more money than anybody in sports. If teams are able to just spend their way to a championship to even a higher degree, maybe than we've seen in years past, then that creates a difficult spot for the teams that don't have an owner with incredibly deep pockets. So I
Yeah.
understand why the NBA would want to look at it, but I'll tell you this, Keith. The flip side of it to me is I have a hard time feeling sympathetic for owners who have watched their franchise valuations go through the roof in the last decade or so, that are then complaining about having to spend on their team.
Yeah, I want to preface this with I have no interest in defending billionaires who have toys, not wanting to spend on the toy. Any Celtics fans who watch this and also ever watch Locked On Celtics with John Corrales? No, I went on there and I went on a huge rant where I was basically like, look, if you're not going to spend on the team, sell the team, because this is ridiculous. Like that you're the Boston Celtics. I do push back a little when people say franchise valuations because you only get that money if you sell the team, right? So that doesn't necessarily mean, what I think
Sure.
it always thinks it means. It's like right. I get those letters in the mail that says your house is worth X. Yeah, if I sell it, and then where am I going to live? Because it doesn't mean I can just immediately buy another house. But I'm with you on that because I do feel like if you're going to cry poor mouth, get out of the business. Someone else will buy these teams. Like the worst team, I don't even know what it is. Usually I think it's Forbes does those team valuations.
Right.
I don't know what it is, but it's going to be like $1.5 billion to $2 billion to buy an NBA team. And we're already hearing that for an expansion fee. And that's going to be teams that are going to be terrible for a number of years. But where I do understand it is it's not that the Warriors can do this. It's that can the Thunder do this? Can the Trailblazers is not a great example because Paul Allen, but they're going to sell the team, right? So it's as you get into those smaller markets, Indiana, those other teams, can they go there, right? Because they have to set some cap on this because their owners aren't as rich as the Warriors owners. And that's where, you run into these issues. Like, look at Philly. I mean, I know Michael Rubin got out of it. The Fanatics guy, he's no longer part of the ownership group. That's going to be a whole other thing. Bobby Marks touched on that. He was like, they funneling money to James Harden outside of the cap. Like, what's happening?
Right.
But, yeah, I don't know where that's going to go. It's all going to be very interesting to see how this plays out because the penalties are already pretty severe. I mean, the Warriors are basically double in tax penalties alone.
Yeah.
The next closest team. Like, I don't know how much more severe you can make it. Now, the other thing, and I think Nate Duncan pointed this out on Twitter, after Mark Stein initially reported this is a thing that owners want to discuss at the Board of Governors, Nate was like, that sounds great that the owners are here, but this all is collectively bargained, right? Because these luxury tax payments can affect player movement and player salaries. So that gets tied into the player side of this too. So my guess is this is just setting the stage for we want to have a conversation about maybe leveling the playing field a little bit more, and let's see where it goes. But in general, it's a bunch of billionaires that are gonna maybe whine over another billionaire spending a little bit more on his hobby. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm gonna get overly sad for any of them on that.
Agreed. All right. Well, front office fans, front officers, front runners, whatever we want to call you. Let us know your thoughts. What do you think about this situation? What do you think about Donovan Mitchell and what's going on there? Let us know in the comment section. If you're over on Apple Podcasts, let us know in the reviews. Appreciate you guys joining us. Apologies for any of the technical issues that we may have had here. That should be
hopefully
resolved
the
by
last
next
day of
episode.
that nonsense.
That's right. That's right. So thank you guys for bearing with us. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.